They say, what's the difference between a Jewish optimist and a Jewish pessimist? A Jewish pessimist says, things can't get any worse. And the Jewish optimist says, oh yes, they can. This Shabbat, in synagogues around the world, we're going to finish the entire book of Bamidbar with the last two concluding Torah portions of Matot and Masei. And we're going to chant together Chazak, Chazak, V'nischazek. As we conclude the portions of the Torah of Bamidbar, we say, let us strengthen ourselves. And when we finish the book of Numbers, which is really the book of Bamidbar in the desert, we reminded of how the Jewish people became stranded in the desert for 40 years. Initially, they were supposed to take a direct journey from Israel from Egypt to the land of Israel. But because of the sin of the spies, who came back with a negative report about the land of Israel and spoke slander, lashon hara, negatively about the land of Israel, God punished them, and God said, Yom Lashana, for every day that the spies were touring the land of Israel, and they came back with their demoralizing report to the Jewish people, which plunged the Jews into despair and weeping, and that night was Tisha B'Av, and God said it will be a permanent day of weeping, and indeed, in 2 weeks from now, approximately, we're going to observe Tisha B'Av, the saddest day on the Jewish calendar, the day that both of our temples were destroyed. So because the Jewish people came back with a negative report, and they saw the negativity of the land of Israel, they were punished for 40 years to have to wander in the desert. But Rabbi Shmulevich asks a question. He says, when the Jews came back, they spoke evil about the land of Israel one day. Why were they punished for 40 days? Because they traveled 40 days in the land of Israel, they had to wander for 40 years in the desert. The 40 days, they were just touring. They didn't speak evil about the land of Israel. And here Rabbi Shmulevich says you see an important lesson. And the lesson is that the sin of lashon hara doesn't begin when you speak bad about another person. The sin of lashon hara begins when you start perceiving the negativity of the other person. When you see and recognize the bad rather than the good. That is the beginning of the sin of lashon hara. The speaking of lashon hara is just the symptom, it's the outcome, it's the natural outgrowth of having perceived negatively in the first place. And therefore, to eradicate the sin of lashon hara, of speaking negatively, we have to begin by perceiving good and never perceiving bad in others. To be optimistic and positive about others rather than pessimistic and negative. Now, I was thinking about what the Talmud says. The Talmud says that God knew that the tongue is such a powerful tool, and it could be the cause of so much harm and so much pain and so much damage in the lives of others, that God put 2 sets of gates to protect the tongue, the teeth and the lips, so that we should guard our tongues to the point that we have 2 locks to make sure that everything we say is positive. But the truth is that it's not just about the tongue, is what Rav Shmulevich is saying. It's also about the eyes and the eyelids, metaphorically saying to not perceive and recognize negative, bad in others, but only to see good. And today with the wearing of masks, we actually have 3 coverings around the tongue: the teeth, the lips, and the mask. And when you cover the mouth with the mask, you have to recognize everyone and everything with your eyes. The focus is the eyes today. When you see people, the first question, who are they? You have to recognize them by their eyes. And perhaps this heightens the lesson to guard our tongues from speaking evil by focusing on our eyes, to draw attention to the fact, what are we seeing? What are we perceiving? And what are people perceiving in us? That is the message of this week's parsha as we conclude the book of Bamidbar, to learn the lesson of the spies, to not see negatively and therefore not speak negatively about others. There's an amazing true story that happened in Israel. There was a young man who was dating, and every time he went out on a date, after the first date, the girl would tell the matchmaker she's not interested in continuing. And he knew why. And the reason was because this young yeshiva boy had a scar down his face. And when the girls would go out with him, they would see the scar, and that would be the end of his dating. And so he went to speak to his rabbi. And his rabbi said to him, I'll tell you what, next time you go out with a girl, address it. Tell her about the story of your scar. Don't ignore it. And so next time he went out with a girl, he sat down with her, and he saw that she's looking at his scar. And he said, do you want to know how I got the scar? And she said, sure, if you'd like to share it. And he told her the story that one time he was walking home in Yerushalayim from yeshiva at night, and there was a period of time where there were stabbings with knifings, where Arab terrorists were attacking Jews with knives, and he saw a Arab terrorist running after a young girl with a knife. And so he ran after this Arab terrorist and tackled him to the ground. And as he was wrestling with him on the ground, the Arab terrorist managed to take the knife and cut his face. He held him down till the police came, and they arrested him and took him off to prison. And he went to the hospital, and they tried to bandage his scar, of course, to stitch it up, but it left a permanent scar. And he told the girl how he got the scar. As the girl heard the story, she started to weep uncontrollably, and she looked at him and she said to him, when did this happen? And he continued to tell her the precise time and date that it occurred. And then she said, where did it happen exactly? And he told her the exact intersection, street, corner that this occurred. And then he asked her, why are you crying? And she said to him, because that girl was me. I was running away from that terrorist, and I saw that somebody tackled the Arab terrorist, but I fled home. I was so scared, and I never knew who saved my life. And now I realize that you're the one who saved my life. Well, of course, they ended up continuing to date, falling in love, and getting married. And today they're happily married with a beautiful family. And the lesson of the story is so powerful. Sometimes what we perceive as a flaw is actually a beauty mark. Sometimes we don't understand the struggles that people have, and what we think is a defect could actually be very positive. And so before we speak, we have teeth, we have lips, and now we have a mask to be careful about what we say about others, so we don't get stranded in the desert like the Jews did for 40 years. And the focus of the eyes teaches us to always try to recognize and to perceive the good in others. And only Hashem is our witness. You know, we're going into a time now where no one knows what's going to be with the future, with schools, and one of the questions is what's going to be with sports, and it seems that sports are going to have to be played with no fans in the stadium. And I was thinking about the word fanfare. When we do good in this world, we don't usually have fans who are applauding us, but we have the most important fan, Hashem. Hashem knows what we've done. Only Hashem can judge a person. We should never judge people. We never know their life story. We never know their struggles. We never know all the good they did. And therefore, always try to be positive. Always recognize and identify with the good in people, never the negative. And always speak positively about other people. And when we do that, then we merit to see the rebuilding of the temple, the rebuilding and the redemption of the world, as we focus on the good, not the bad in each other. Such a vital lesson for the times we're living in. Focus on speaking positive about others and noticing and observing the good in others. And through that, we will find personal redemption. And as a community, as a society, we will be redeemed from all of our troubles, all of our misfortune, and we will find our way to our own individual land, a promised land, a land of peace and serenity in our lives. Have a wonderful day.